I do want to talk about, because I just brought up being second generation and things like that. What was it like knowing, like, I'm going into film, with who your dad is and things like that? What are some of the things going through your mind? What's the relationship like, if any? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, because we want to let people know your dad, John Avildsen, like you brought up, directed Rocky, won an Oscar, the Karate Kid movies, so you do have like this place in some of the greatest sports movies of our youth growing up, man.
Yeah. So it's funny. I'd actually love to get your guys' take on this. We're trying to figure out how can we get like just some more awareness for Queen of the Ring in the theaters now. And technically, like if you go on Rotten Tomatoes and you look at like top movies, sports, we're the #1 sports movie in America, but we're like the only one in the theaters.
Hey,
so like the #1 sports movie in America, the only sports movie in America, right?
You know how many times that's happened?
Yeah,
bro, I don't give a damn.
And then we someone, my marketing guy was like, you know what, you could do the #1 sports movie in America with the #2 most interesting fight in America. Blake and Justin, but here's Billy and Mildred. You know what I mean?
That's like crazy. That's crazy.
Because like even if we have a new trailer, but I'm like, the stuff that works on social media, it's not even like the high-end trailers. It's like these like more raw, fun things that just end up what everyone shares. So I'm like, I don't even know if we drop a new fancy trailer. We need to drop something that's clever and funny. And
listen, Den of Thieves 2 came out January 10th. We said the best movie of 2025. Came out January 10th, bro. Use that. You gotta use it, right? Yeah, you have to.
Use what you got to get what you want.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. So my dad, so I was born with his last name. I never knew him as a kid. It was a head fuck because I loved his movies. Yeah. People knew who he was. So I go to elementary school. Hey, what's Mr. Miyagi like? Like, I don't know. I've never met him. You know? So there was that element. And then it was actually on that New York trip where I saw Taker Warrior. It was my first time seeing my dad in the flesh.
How old were you?
This was like 12, I think. It was. I started going to a co-ed military school in the 7th grade, even before I hit puberty, because in the 6th grade I started just getting into a lot of trouble. I was like a straight A student in elementary school. 6th grade I started hanging out with the 8th graders. I'm drinking Mickey's malt liquor. I'm smoking cigarettes. I can't even inhale. I'm skipping school to do graffiti. I was growing up in DC. I was like totally, off the rails as a young, I mean, this was before puberty. I look at like 11, 12-year-olds now. I can't imagine the shit I was doing back then.
Right.
And so my family like put money together to get me sent to a military school because they're like, he needs like some positive male role models. Sadly, WWF superstars weren't going to get it done.
Yeah.
Even though that's now it's like, we needed someone in person doing it. So after the first year, my family ran out of money, and they were. My mom was in, basically a New York family court case with my dad, trying to get him to pay the tuition for the military school, and I had to go there and testify, basically saying why I believe I should get the tuition paid and why it's important. Oh, wow. So my dad he's about the distance you and I are, Si, except we're both facing towards the courtroom door, and he's wearing. He's reading a newspaper, and I remember exactly what he was wearing. It's one of those like just exact memories, right?
Yeah.
The color of his socks, the way his legs were crossed. He's reading a newspaper. I look at him, a little kid. I'm like, oh my God, this is my first time seeing my dad.
Wow.
He never looks over, goes into the courtroom, and I don't see him again for 20-something years.
Man.
And my therapist says that was my moment of annihilation as a child. And with specifically boys that grow up without fathers, they're usually one of two things. They either overly compensate and try to overachieve, or a lot of times, I think the statistics like 65% they end up in a life of crime, poverty, violence, or drugs, which is another thing that drew me to Mildred Burke's story, because it was this single mom. Mm-hmm. She didn't have a dad. Her son didn't have a dad. And that moment was forever in me. Now, once I met my father and we became the best of friends on our first birthday together, he's like, I want you to ask me the hard questions. And I asked him about that, if he remembered it.
What brought you two together?
Actually, I never said on camera actually how the meeting, like how it actually happened. So he, whatever. It's all true. I'll share it. My mother had I love her to death, and a lot of this is from the trauma with the lawsuits and everything with my dad and, you know, substance abuse. But she was manic depressive, bipolar, alcohol problems. But she was also my Millie mom, like always pushing me to believe in my dream. Again, this goes back to not everything's good and evil and light and dark. It's like she was a big reason I became successful because she always fought for me. Yeah. Like no matter what. And any insane idea, I'm going to be a singer in a band. I'm going to move to LA and start whatever it was. She was in the fight with me, but she had her own demons. And you know, I don't know how I didn't end up an alcoholic, but alcoholism is in a lot of my family genes on my mom's side. And so she was still battling very intense alcoholism. She was basically squatting at my house and getting drunk and driving me insane. And so I called, she was just being completely neurotic, and I called the cops and I said, come to my house. I go, I don't want her arrested, but I got her a home in Palm Desert or La Quinta, and she needs to leave here because my girlfriend at the time, she was fighting with her. She was just being insane. She's getting drinking vodka at my house. I'm like, you got to leave. She doesn't live here. I literally bought her own house. Like, get her there. So the cops come and they're like, look, she's too drunk to drive. What do you want us to do? I go, if we don't arrest her and she can't drive, like you want to take her to, I was like, okay, I'm going to leave tonight. I'm going to go stay at a friend's house. She can stay here. She has to leave in the morning and go to her house. In that night when I left, I think she continued to drink. She calls my father's answering machine and I think leaves a Oscar-worthy performance of just, my son resents me. He hates me. You have to acknowledge him. You have to read the articles about him. He lives on Mulholland Drive. I'm in his house right now. He did it all on his own. All he wants to know is know you, please. And I think my dad's, they weren't married, but basically his wife, Janie, this amazing, she was actually an Olympic Korean badminton player. She hears it and I think tells my dad, like, John, you know, call your son. And then I get home the next day and my mom's still there. And I'm like, I can't believe you're still in my house after everything we just went through last night. And in my head, I'm just like, how dare you still be here? And she goes, your father called you. And I'm like, no, it's like, stop, just go to the desert. She goes, your father called you, Ashley. And I go to my iPhone and there's a Beverly Hills message. And I hey, Ashley, it's John Avildsen. I'd love to meet you, kiddo. You wanna go out and get breakfast or a coffee sometime this week? And God, I'm getting emotional, man. It's like pro wrestling, bro. Yeah. And he left me a message. And then my mom goes, I'm going to the desert now. And she left, and it was the light in the darkness. It was me calling the cops and saying, get the fuck away from me. Yeah. And her being disinhibited enough from being drunk to call my dad and leave that voicemail. And then me and my dad went out to, I never know how to say it, the Le Pain Cotidon, whatever the French breakfast place is. And we had this great meal. And then he was like, yeah, you should come over to my house. I was working on this movie, this like fun little rock and roll Faustian devil movie, American Satan. I had the script and I wanted to get his notes on it. And he goes, yeah, why don't you come over to my house tomorrow and I'll give you some. No, you know what he says? He goes, you guys will appreciate it. He goes, yeah, this is my address. Throw it over the fence, like the script. Oh, wow. Yeah, he goes, throw it over the fence. I go, this motherfucker, after all this, throw it over the fence. But you know me? Like the artist and the businessman and me go, that's fine. I'm going to get notes. He's a fucking great filmmaker. Fuck this dude, whatever. Let me get the notes. Let's see what he had notes on my script. And so I pull up. And I'm getting ready to throw the script over the fucking fence. And sure enough, he starts opening the gate. Oh, wow. Yeah. And he goes, park right over there. Come on in. I made you something. And we go in and we have a drink. We smoke a little pipe. I think he mixed like tobacco and pot a little bit. He was like the old school. Like,
Yeah.
when they mix it. And we just start hitting it off, and we just stayed up all night long, like two kids. And it was like you're totally my fucking dad. Like I'm this weird hybrid of my mom and my dad, and here you are. And it was just like the most surreal thing. And then the first gift he gave me, which I should digitize this and do something with it so the world can just see it, was like the original Rocky script. Oh, really? And it was very different. It was much darker. Apollo Creed was like this Jamaican rude boy. There was like gambling in it. There was like all these, it was just a much darker, you know, raw, gritty story before my dad started kind of doing all his notes to it. But it was just like, you know, I could tell he didn't have like 10 of these. He was like, I think he was trying to overcompensate of like, all right, like I just met my son and what the fuck do I do now? Like, here's the original Rocky script. Like, I love you and I'm sorry and let's be friends. And I remember he said something, and then we can stop talking about all this if you want. I know I've been going forever, but he was he was just like, he goes, you know, this is no shade at like my half brothers, but like, you know, they don't really talk to me for whatever reason. Like when I became friends with my dad, I would come to like, you know, Christmas dinner or his birthday. And it's like, hey, here's the circus freak, like a strange bastard son. Like I'm here. Hi, everyone. My sister was great. My little sister, who's got a different mom than my older half brothers, she was great. But the other half brothers, there was always this like, and I think it's because I became very successful on my own and I was the rejected one. And they grew up with all the bells and whistles, and maybe they didn't get whatever level of success or monetary gain, whatever it was, but there's definitely always this thing. And I tried to figure it out, but there was always a thing. And my dad, I remember he says, you know, of course, you know, my one son who's living in the Hollywood Hills and did it all on his own. And, you know, you've sold all these records and you're making your own movies already and all these things. He goes, of course I don't meet you until the third act of my life. He goes, it's just like it was written like this. And now we have such limited time to even share together. Cause he was like 80. Yeah. And it was just I'll never forget that when he's called it, of course I don't meet you till my third act of my life, you know? But yeah, to make it a little more lighthearted, I remember like my mom would like show me like once I was like old enough to really understand what was going on, she would like show me these letters. She was like writing my dad, and I remember there was one. She was like, you know, John, this isn't a scene in one of your movies that you can just edit out. He lives here. He exists. You need to, you know. When I was like a little kid, there's actually an episode of Larry King. I should just put this on the internet. Maybe it'll help bring more awareness to the movie. But like she went on Larry King and they were talking about it. Like, should a father have to like support or acknowledge or anything a child born out of wedlock that's like clearly in a much different echelon, you know, of living standards and all that. And I went back and watched it as an adult, got emotional. My mom was like, I don't even care about the money. If he would just be a dad to Ashley, that's all I really want. Yeah. And then Larry King put me over. He held up a little headshot of me at like 10. He goes, even not for my own ego. Why wouldn't you want to acknowledge this kid? Look how cute he is. So that always stuck with me. But anyway, yeah, that's how I met my dad, man. Hopefully that we get a moment out of that. You know? Dude. Sell some fucking tickets this weekend. Yeah.
Watch new episodes of No Contest Wrestling every Wednesday or listen wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us at No Contest Wrestling Podcast on Instagram.